Good morning, family. Yes, good morning, Facebook. Good morning, Christy Champagne Caruso.
Good morning.
Good morning, Mula.
Good morning.
Did you guys do yoga this morning?
We did do some yoga
Beautiful.
and
How'd it go?
meditation. It was good on my first day, so I only have one person. I was late, and so hi, Amy.
When we arrived, right? And so, what a great
I
opportunity.
arrived, and I understand there's a lot of things that I can help with. So I'm hoping to, help with that. But it went wonderful, and
Beautiful.
I do see it growing into something very
It will just take you talking about it at one women's empowerment group, and
good.
bam,
Boom.
it'll be
Yes.
over. Good morning, Lika.
What's up, Mike?
Oh, everything is up. All of the things are up. Life is good. We've got a lot of a lot of exciting things to announce. But I'm not going to tell you about any of them right now because I'm so late that we've got too many things that we've got to cover, and not quite a whole heck of a lot of time to cover them. So today's day 7/day 48. I combined this for the high school students last week. We combined Tuesday and Wednesday because of the grand opening and all of the things. So today what we're going to do is we're going to combine the days, Tuesday and Wednesday. We're going to give you a day off tomorrow, which will be great for everybody. And we're going to go ahead and jump right in. First things first, it is true. We are starting a team. I'm excited about it. There are going to be opportunities for both licensed people and unlicensed people to work as finders or as real estate agents. So, yes, it is time. It's time to start a team. It is time to get back to work. I told everybody, hey, listen, I'm never going to start a team again. But the truth is, I love running a team. It is a lot of fun. By the way, shout out to Lazy Turtle Candles. Makes our office smell so delicious. Made right here in our area, locally made. All right, cool. This is what we're going to cover today. Today we're going to jump into liquidated damages and provisions. We're going to talk about arbitration, which is a way to settle a lot of problems before they necessarily get too big and sort of limit liability for both buyers and sellers. We're going to jump in a little bit to the purchase agreement and some ways that you can outline that, which will also make it so that we're touching on the real estate purchase options, because I found out about some new programs that make it more possible for buyers to buy in this market if they don't necessarily have the cash out of pocket. Right now, what's happening is there's so many people bidding over value that are pricing people out of the market that we need to know about these different opportunities that are available to us that make it possible to keep our VA buyers in the market, keep our cash low buyers in a market that they seem to have been priced out of. And so we'll jump into that a little bit. Actually, a lot of it. We'll talk about sellers, residence, and foreclosure, and how Zillow is using pre-foreclosures as a way to sort of generate leads in a way that I don't necessarily disagree with. In fact, I don't like it one bit. But we'll talk about why I don't like it and exactly what that pre-foreclosure is and why it's being used and how it's being used by Zillow and by other people to market homes where people are behind on their payment, but not necessarily in a situation where they want to sell or are necessarily underwater. So a lot of them would benefit from a short sell more than they would benefit from being foreclosed on. So there are options out there, and of course, it looks like we limit them a lot of times when it comes time to cash in. And in our market, an enlightened agent is an empowered agent and creates empowered clients, and that's the truth. Okay. So we're going to talk about income property acquisitions. There are a lot of different people right now that are getting back into this as an investment market. There are people who are like, oh, the crash. The truth is this fourth great migration that we're experiencing right now, where people are seeking opportunity or are fleeing tragedy, is creating a situation where markets are sort of hyperinflated. Good morning, Amy. Good to see you. Good morning, Deanna. Good to see you. And it has created a situation where inventory is low. And because inventory is low, there is opportunity. There is, and this is no joke. We have seen situations recently where people have acquired properties, put some paint on them, and then sold them for $50,000 or $60,000 more. when in actuality, wouldn't it have been beneficial to have an enlightened agent create an empowered client um, and empower them through their real estate transactions? Say, hey, listen, if you spent $5,000 on some paint, or if X, you had somebody come in and help you out, or if I listed it with the understanding that it would save them so much more equity than just preying on them in their situation. So there's a good way to be an investor. There's a great way to go about acquiring properties and putting a little bit of money into them in either a long-term hold or a quick flip. Quick flips are actually working right now, and I'm seeing a lot of people slap lipstick on a pig, put it back on a market, and bam, more money right there. So there's any shifting market creates opportunities. There are a lot of people that are worried that this market is not going to be sustainable and that it will crash. But there's a lot of things that are at play right now that, of course, we talk about, and we've talked about in other classes, that make it so that this market is less likely to crash because so many people, despite losing their jobs, have a great deal of equity in their home, and there's still a great deal of demand due to the scarcity in housing and the amount of people moving out to areas like the Inland Empire, from LA, OC, San Diego, and for people in the Sacramento area who are seeing the benefits of people leaving the Bay Area. Some people are calling it a tech exodus, but I think that that's disingenuous because there's not a lot of people selling their homes that are at that upper echelon of income earners. You see a lot of people that are just flat out being priced out of markets. Anyway, this will also create opportunity in San Francisco and in LA and also in commercial, because there's a lot of people that lost their jobs, lost their businesses. You're in a situation where 60% of small businesses have now closed down permanently. And so commercial space is there's opportunity. A lot of people who lost their jobs are now starting businesses. But without getting off on that too much, and I'm already doing it, we're going to talk about a formal exchange of property. And in fact, that's pretty boring, so we're not really going to talk about that long. Real estate purchase options, which is going to be part of that first segment with the purchase agreement and the options for you. And then vesting ownership. There are a lot of different ways to acquire land that will make it. Anyway, we'll talk about that, of course, if we get to it, when we get to it. But what it does in short is that when you acquire land and it's a seller will hold. The seller says, hey, with 10% down, I'll hold this for 5 years. And then you're in a situation where your ownership is sort of almost being created over time versus you immediately owning it right away. Okay, here we go. Let's go ahead and let's shift the view. Let's get to the whiteboard. Let's make sure that all of these monologues have a little bit of direction in them. And we get on task here. All right. Here we go. Dun, 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 dun. Bum, 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 bum. Dun, 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 dun. Okay. Let's do the thing. Oh my goodness gracious, hot coffee. Thank you so much. Yes, yes, yes. Okay, here we go. Where is the border? It is right there. Okay. And of course, we know that we don't respect borders in the show. So we just trample right over them, but this kind of gives me a guideline to work with. Okay, so today, liquidated. I don't want to write all this out. I'm already being lazy. Liquidated damages. And it's already flying off the chart here. There we go. Liquidated damages. Arbitration. In fact, you know what we're going to do? We're just going to kind of combine this. Because it's kind of boring. Okay, we're going to talk about the purchase agreement. And in fact, we're going to take this and we're going to combine part of this with the purchase options. Okay. Hiya. We're moving forward. We're going to talk about Zillow's pre-foreclosure stuff. And in fact, we'll just call it pre-foreclosure because they're not the only people doing it. They're just, at one point, I was actually buying these leads before I knew what they were. And I had a person call me and be like, hey, man, why is my house listed for sale? Like, my house is not even for sale. So we're going to talk about that. The pre-foreclosure, that's not even like a pre-foreclosure. What is that? It's like fake words. And income property acquisition. And of course, all right, here we go. Income property acquisition. Income property. Keep writing this stuff out. I'm like, what? Probably. All right, here we go. Okay, a formal exchange. We're not even going to talk about it. You're not. Actually, you know what? Got to touch on it a little bit. Formal exchange. I'm going to have to go like lightning round today. We're combining 2 days, and I was late. What a bum. Real estate purchase options. Okay, and then vesting the ownership. So instead of talking about vesting the ownership, we're going to kind of expand this into. Actually, you know what we're going to do? Instead of talking about vesting the ownership, we're going to talk a little bit about creating inventory, because as far as I'm concerned, vesting ownership is another way of doing this in which, let's see, this is going to be a fun one right here. Okay. What did I just say we're going to, oh yeah, creating inventory. Okay, I'm going to take down the little blurbage here, and we're going to jump right into class. Here we go. Liquidated damages and arbitration. There is a part of every contract that is, in fact, I'm going to put this down right here. There is a part of every contract that is the liquidated damages and arbitration part where you have an opportunity to opt in. I always suggest to people that they opt in that moment while they're signing the contract, because it limits the liability for both the buyer and seller to, I believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, any other licensed real estate agents in this area, but I believe it limits the liability to 3% of the cost of the total house. So like, let's say the house is $300,000, and this is the way that it was explained to me. If the house is $300,000, instead of being in a situation through litigation where somebody might end up, not litigation, where someone ends up, litigation. Someone ends up owning your house, you limit your liability to say 3% of the cost of the home, which is $9,000, and then instead of going to court, you end up going to arbitration where you're sitting in front of other, I believe, real estate professionals, members of the board and whatnot, versus going and sitting in court and having to spend thousands of dollars in hiring a legal staff and all of that different stuff. So I always suggest to people that in those two boxes that show up as liquidated damages in arbitration, there's these two long blurbs, and at this point, almost nobody signs contracts in person anyway. Even when they're sending them out via DocuSign, people just sort of click through contracts because they trust you. Liquidated damages in arbitration limits liability for both the buyer and the seller in the event that there comes a lawsuit or a pending lawsuit, and it puts them in a situation where they're not becoming broke and somebody doesn't end up owning their house, or they end up homeless because of some stupid contract stuff that maybe they didn't understand. Okay, I hope that I explained that right. In the event that I did not explain that right, I'm just going to go ahead and opt out of any responsibility whatsoever and say that, but seriously, that's one of the reasons why for a long time I just sort of read from the book. I'm like, I'm not even sure I know this stuff right, so I'm just going to read it verbatim. Okay, now the purchase agreement and purchase options. Now, with so there is VA, FHA, and this is most of what we were seeing in this market, or excuse me, in this area, was a lot of VA and FHA buyers. Right now, we're seeing a lot of conventional and a lot of cash, and we'll get into that here. Conventional. cash. There are certain areas of my of this district that are considered USDA land, USDA land, and so they qualify for USDA loans, which is a zero down program, and that extends to parts of Winchester, Menifee, I believe, and then I know for sure North Winchester, and then even Central Park, I believe, which is interesting because that area has been like suburbia for a long time. But they've been talking about redistricting a lot of these USDA land maps for a long time, but they haven't. And so if somebody qualifies, and of course, there's a lot of hoops to jump through. Your income is limited as far as whether or not you qualify for it. So, like, if somebody has like 5 kids and they make like $97,000, then they will probably qualify for a USDA loan. But then, of course, that limits the area on the map that they're wanting to, they are able to move into. Okay, now, so that's USDA. We talked about that. Cash, and then we're going to talk about this new option too, which is like higher interest loans. Higher interest loans, we'll talk about that last because that's sort of a new program that I've become aware of, which is making it possible for cash low buyers to stay in the market. We're going to really dive into that and whether or not it's something that is a good idea or not. And in fact, it would make a great Socratic discussion. So if anybody has any opinions when we jump into these higher interest loans, I would be very interested to get your feedback. So cash is pretty self-explanatory. There's a lot of cash right now buying in this market because this market in our area, it's like 50, 60% built out. And also the schools are good. People are in a situation to where they are now able to work from home from a laptop. There's a lot of opportunities where people, maybe they were renting, but now in like in an area where they were working in a tech-related job, but now they're able to work from home, so they're able to open their laptop. A lot of people still don't want to leave California, and if they don't want to leave California, that's a lot of the people that we're seeing. A lot of the people who don't want to leave California. Now, the people that live in areas like this and are renting are having a difficult time competing in these markets, even if they lost a job, they sold their house, they have a bunch of cash on hand because the rental market has become overinflated. Now, when you have a bunch of people that are trying to buy that can't buy, you put people in a situation to where rent prices go up. And what happens when people can't afford to rent and they can't afford to buy and they can't afford to leave? Well, Dave Chappelle said it, you stand between a man and his next meal, and it's equivalent to killing a man. And so I think that when you put somebody in a situation where they can't feed their families, they can't afford to shelter their families, then we see situations where homelessness skyrockets, exodus happens, people have to leave areas. But the thing is, a lot of people don't want to leave. And so it ends up in a situation to where, of course, rentals are going like this. People are waiting for prices to go down so that they can buy, and then they're put in a situation where they're being priced out of a market because they've been waiting to buy, waiting for the market to go down, and then you have an artificially inflated market which continues to inflate for a long time, and then it was no longer artificially inflated, it was crisis inflated, right? Anyway, we could go on more about that. But so what's happened is in this area, there's a lot of cash buyers because people are selling out of a higher dollar market. And in addition, there's a lot of Asian buyers that are moving into this area that have cash, that have large funds on hand. And that, it's great for areas that it ends up really improving property value. And of course, I welcome everybody, but I'm just calling a thing a thing. And so what happens is when you have a lot of these people who have a lot of money, it makes it difficult for people that are cash low to stay in neighborhoods that they love, that they enjoy, et cetera, and so forth, without the addition of more housing or the addition of higher density housing. Higher density housing is something that this area continues to rail against, which I am a big fan of. I think that what we need to do is we need to create more affordable housing. And then people say, oh, well, that's going to bring, undesirable people. That's going to bring people like me and my family. That's going to bring people like, us when we were growing up. And so I think that we have an opportunity to shape this world that we're living in. And we don't do it by rejecting the people that Jesus told us to make the cornerstone of our church. So if we're going to bring in everybody, everyone needs access to opportunity. And what is higher density housing other than opportunity to have access to better schools, to have access to areas where there are more hospitals, to have access to more opportunity, and to create a bridge out of a bad situation. And unless we create situations where people can rent or buy more affordably, and we stop creating the restrictions that have come with living in the state of California, then we create excess homelessness and poverty. So that's what ends up happening. Now, there's also a lot of conventional buyers that are buying. Conventional, there's sort of this common misconception that conventional buyers are all 20% down. That is the magical number for people when they want to avoid PMIs. Now, of course, with VA, there is no principal mortgage insurance that is required, so the monthly payment's already lower versus a conventional loan where in order to not have to pay for the additional PMI fees, people are putting 20% down so that they have the additional equity in their home. But there are 10% down conventional loans, et cetera, and so forth. FHA, there's also a common misconception that all FHA loans require 3.5% down, when in fact there are a lot of FHA first-time homebuyer programs. There are a lot of FHA type loans that is like 1% down, or there are even first-time homebuyer assistance programs that will help. And in fact, like I've said before in prior shows, and in fact I haven't heard anything more about it, but I had heard that President Biden was going to be doing some sort of homebuyer credit of $15,000 for first-time homebuyers, which a lot of people are like, oh, that would just overinflate the markets again. Yes, but understand the people that it's going to empower into home ownership are the people that are cash low, that are cash poor, that the difference between them paying off someone else's mortgage and paying off their own mortgage is a down payment. How can you tell someone that they have to pay $2,500 a month in a rent? You have to rent for $2,500 a month because you can't afford to buy for $2,300 a month. Doesn't make any sense, right? So enlightened real estate agents create empowered real estate agents who create empowered clients. So if we put ourselves in a situation to where we can empower our clients who are, FHA, who are VA, then we're going to have a better experience all the way around. So knowing all of the different programs, in addition, working with a great lender who understands all of these programs is huge. So if you're a lender, you can always feel free to drop your name in the comments. You can always feel free to answer any questions that might pop up about this stuff. We're not keeping anyone out of our community. What we're doing is we are creating a culture of collaboration with which more people can grow. VA loans are, of course, my favorite program because VA loans have been traditionally VA no-no. VA no money down, no money out of pocket. Unfortunately, we are in a situation where VA loans, the no money out of pocket is creating them a situation where everyone's bidding above and beyond the appraisal value, which makes it very difficult for people who are cash low to bridge the gap in the event that someone has to waive an appraisal, which is almost every single transaction. Which leads me to VA, FHA, higher percentage loans. And I know that I'm not calling that the right thing, but let's call the thing a thing here. Higher percentage loans. So like rates are very low right now. People are like, it's near zero, even though they just went up. So let's say rates, and let's say, what are rates? Anybody know right now? Let's say 3? Wow, really low. Damn, I didn't even realize they were that low. 3%. So rates are 3%. So what a higher percentage loan does is it says, okay, I know that the house is being valued at, the house is being valued at $500,000, right? Now with this VA loan, that's a no money down thing, so you should just be able to come in with with no money out of pocket, cover your earnest money deposit, your inspections, etc., and you're good, right? That's not necessarily the case right now because, of course, there are closing costs that have to be factored in. And so what we did was we talked about this in a past class, and we figured that for a $500,000 home, the average VA buyer is probably going to have to come up with about $4,000 out of pocket in order to close, because you only get so much of that covered by in the rate by the lender. You could only get so much of that covered by writing it on top of the closing costs when there is no opportunity to do that right now because nothing's appraising. So you end up in a situation to where you are hoping that the house appraises for what you wrote it at, and a lot of homes are appraising a little bit higher right now because there's an understanding that for demand. But you can't have someone else cover your down or your closing costs anymore. Now, with people who are using their VA loan for a second time who don't have a VA disability rating, this comes into play even more right now because they have to pay that additional $5,000 in the VA funding fee for using it a second time. That's why getting a 0% disability rating or higher really sets you up for home buying in the future, because you don't end up in a situation where you're taking $5,000 or more out of pocket in order to buy a house when you could typically not do that. But that's another class. That's another time. We'll get into that later. Higher percentage. We'll get into that in another class. Higher percentage loans. So instead of 3%. And let's say your monthly payment is, let's say $2,500 a month or whatever. And these are rough numbers. Do not quote me on this. But say your monthly payment is $2,500 a month or whatever, something like that. Now, they say that, well, what we need to do is we need to offer $525,000 for it because we know that the house is not going to appraise, but we need to beat out these other offers because we're talking to the listing agent. Listing agent says, hey, listen, we're like significantly over asking, but we really want this house. Well, what can you do in that situation? Well, what you can do is you can apply for some of these higher percentage rate loans or the higher interest rate loans where, let's say, and again, rough numbers, but let's say instead of going at a 3% interest rate, they say, and let's make it really dramatic just so that we're really making it something that people are going into with their eyes open. Let's say they're like, okay, it is a 6% interest rate instead of a 3%, but we're going to cover the difference in cash. It will be a cash purchase because of the fact that your credit is good. You've got a great FICO score. Your debt to income ratio is low. Now, if you're barely qualifying for a VA loan, if you're barely qualifying for an FHA loan, this is not necessarily going to be a situation to where this is even going to be an option for you. But if you're one of those VA buyers, and there are a lot of them out there which have squeaky clean credit, they've not even necessarily squeaky clean, but a low debt to income ratio. Hey man, I buy off all my cars when I buy them. I don't really keep a lot of debt. Then you could be in a situation to where, so that you can buy, you might be willing to pay more monthly in order to get in the home that you really love. Now, so let's say that jacks your monthly payment up from, and again, rough numbers, guys, but $2,500 a month, it goes up to, let's just be dramatic here, $2,750 a month, right? And they're like, okay, well, that's still below my BAH. I know that I'm never going to lose my job. I have job security, so I'm not worried about the $2,750 plus, my wife works, et cetera, and so forth. So you never want to put your buyers in a situation where you're going to be driving by a foreclosure sign down the road. You always want to be in a situation where they can comfortably make their monthly payments. So if that's a situation where they're like, hey, listen, I'm willing to pay more money monthly in order to get the house that I love in the neighborhood that I love because I keep getting priced out by these cash buyers, then you could put them in a situation where they are now technically a cash buyer, but the interest rate is now higher. Does that make sense? Okay, cool. Then I'm going to move on because I only have 12 minutes and I have so much that I need to talk about, and we've only gotten so far. In fact, we've only covered 2 of the 6 topics. So the Zillow pre-foreclosure, pre-foreclosure program, what happens is a lot of people end up in a situation where they're behind on their payment, and in fact, that's a lot of people right now, right? Oh goodness. You know what? I'm going to go off on a tangent. We might end up going long. Civil. We're going to talk about Zillow. We're going to really call it like this is sort of like a really ugly thing because right now there is this. Oh my goodness. Okay, there's a moratorium on evictions right now, and God help us when this moratorium is lifted because they have already Uberized the eviction process. There is a real company out there called Civil. Now, if you look it up, what Civil does is they're already up and running in other states. I don't think that they're up and running in California yet, but what they do is they basically Uberize the eviction process. So somebody pings a job, the job goes out, and this isn't a professional that's accepting the job. This isn't somebody that's trained with evictions. They are assigned the address. They go out to evict these people and give the terms, right? So like, oh, that's my phone, I think. That's our 5-minute warning. And this is my 5-minute warning to you guys. This is absolutely going to go long. Okay. It's probably going to go long. We'll see. So the Civil, the development of this company has made a really, so what is the ugliness of capitalism? People willing to do very ugly things for money, right? So instead of somebody showing up and being like, hey, listen, I know that you guys are behind, et cetera, and so forth. Like, this isn't like necessarily like a mom and pop thing anymore. What we've done is we've made like a sort of like Amazon situation where it's just like, hey, independent contractor who has no liability whatsoever. Like, now I'm hiring an independent contractor as a landlord, let's say. Let's say I'm the man, right? And I'm like, I'm going to hire this company, Civil, and they're going to do all my evictions throughout the country. And so I just drop these jobs and I say, hey, I'm willing to pay $150 for someone to go evict somebody in Winchester, right? Then somebody accepts the job, and there's always these people that, willing to do things. Now, there's this great quote by someone who was a J.B. Du Bois, and he was a railroad developer. And he said, the benefits of capitalism is I can always hire one half of the population to shoot the other half. Right? So what we've done is we've created a situation where now, somebody sitting away in their tower is clicking a button saying, hey, independent contractor, you're going to get paid $150 to go kick out this family, this individual, this, senior, et cetera, and so forth. And now when this moratorium lifts, with people as cash poor as they are right now, like I've said before, people are willing to do ugly things for money in order to be willing to feed their family. Now, if you look this up, there are documentaries already about it. People are already talking about it on YouTube. There's a man literally crying while he is evicting an elderly woman and putting all of her things on the porch of this hotel or this apartment, that she's been living in. And so anyway, it is going to get ugly. And so what happens is what Zillow has done, this is a separate thing, which is why we've done this, Zillow has been marketing pre-foreclosures forever. At one point, I was buying Zillow pre-foreclosure leads until I got a call from somebody saying, hey, why is my house for sale? And then I found out through talking to this person, and then I found out since by doing my own investigation that what happens is if somebody's in a notice of default type of situation, even if they have equity in their home, even if they have no intention whatsoever of selling, their home is listed without the approval of the seller because the person who owns the debt or the lawyer or whatever, the bank, puts the home up for sale as a Zillow pre-foreclosure in order to generate leads, which are then sold to agents who buy into the Zillow pre-foreclosure program. And a lot of them don't even necessarily understand what they're buying into. But what happens is then people are driving by somebody's house who is already in a state of default. They're already behind on their monthly payments. And then next thing you know, they find, hey, we found out that you're selling your house. How much, in order to whatever. And then they look up their house and they find out, oh my God, my house is a Zillow pre-foreclosure. Now, in order to make this just really real for everybody, at one point, my own house was on the Zillow pre-foreclosure, right? So when you get into a state of default, or I can't remember if it had actually been on there or if I was waiting for it, because I knew the way that it works, and I may have just worked it up in my mind. But I feel like I remember it showing up on the Zillow pre-foreclosure. Maybe it was the anxiety of it. And in fact, now that I'm thinking about it, maybe it was the anxiety. I was looking at it every day. I was like, I'm waiting for the day that the foot drops and then everybody knows. But I was in a state of default on my home. I was 6 months behind on my monthly payment, and I was like, I had a lot of equity, but I didn't want to sell my home. That's my home. My kids, know that as home. You know what I mean? And so anyway, the idea behind this old Zillow pre-foreclosure is to generate leads, which people are then buying. For on the assumption that they're going to buy a house which isn't even listed for sale, right? Okay, I feel like I did enough of that. Let's move on. Income property acquisition. God, I don't want to talk about this. So we're not going to talk about it. I'm just going to say that there are two different types of income properties, two different types of acquisitions when you're thinking about it. There is a long-term hold, and then like a quick flip, okay? So like a long term is like, hey, I know that I could buy this and I could rent it immediately for X, or I could put a little bit of money into it and I could rent it out for X, which will then, cover the monthly plus the amount in the long run, right? Or there's the quick flip, which there are a lot of people who are getting into this right now in a lot of these neighborhoods that are built in the 1980s, 1990s in Temecula, in addition to in Hemet, where a lot of these homes were built in the 1960s. They go in, they open up a kitchen, they change out some floors. We've talked about the great boomer boom, or excuse me, the post-boomer boom before, which is basically there's a bunch of old people that own a lot of real estate that are getting ready to die. That's just the truth. And so what happens is there's a great deal of opportunity in that, and that 95% of wealth that is inherited is spent within the first 5 years, which means that the family that's all thinking, oh, well, maybe we'll just hold on to it and rent it out, and it'll be long-term. We could always go back and we could all visit, we could always go up to, it's our cabin in the woods, you know what I mean? All of that stuff, they sell the house, and then it goes on the market. Good morning. It goes on the market, and then next thing you know, like I said, 95% of wealth is spent within the first 5 years of inheritance, which has created this term that economists are calling the post-boomer boom, which means that $30 trillion is going to change hands over the course of the next 2 decades. How do you put yourself into a situation to where you're going to benefit from that? And of course, we've talked about that before, which is the niches are in the riches. The riches are in the niches. You have to niche down in order to create a situation where wealth is abundant. So I talk about this time and time again. Every war throughout history has been fought over real estate. So if you put yourself into a situation to where you are the brand that is naturally associated with real estate, just like Starbucks is to coffee, just like a burger is to McDonald's or In-N-Out locally if you're going for a different brand, et cetera and so forth, you create that lifestyle brand, that local dominance that you will benefit when the time comes that wealth is inherited. Your name will be at the forefront of everybody's mind. Now, a formal exchange of property, and in fact, I think I might just about end this on time. A formal exchange of property. So you have to wait for not just escrow to close in order to take over a property, in order to take to occupy a property. You have to wait for title to record. Now, if escrow closes late enough in the day, a lot of times if that's after 2 o'clock, you'll be in a situation where you're not necessarily taking over that property until title records the next day. Now, a big thing that you're going to want to talk about is when is COE? So close of escrow. When is possession? So if possession is COE plus 3, then they're going to be a situation where they're closing, they're recording, and then that day plus the third day at 5 o'clock, they take occupancy, right? So if you close escrow late in the day on Monday, but you don't record until Tuesday, then Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday at 5 o'clock, you're taking occupancy of the property, right? And then, of course, I'm not going to go off on that tangent. We won't stop on time. Now, creating inventory. This is the last thing that I'm going to talk about. In fact, this is going to be sort of a tease because you're going to have to come and talk to me about it later in person in order to get the real deal on how we're going to do this and how you create inventory. It's probably good that we ran out of time because I always show my hand anyway, and it ends up not being really a good thing. So when inventory is low, you have an opportunity to create inventory. One of those ways that you can do it is by developing land, creating opportunity by acquiring property that a seller will carry position, doing some renovations, wiping out an old mobile that's already attached to city water, city power, et cetera, and so forth, and then putting in a new mobile where just based on credit, and then you could turn around and sell it for an excess, like a large gain. Creating inventory is where the money is, right? So if you can create inventory, you'll make money. One of the big things that my dad told me was he's been in construction for 30 years. He's driving around. He's like, no one is building out here. Only luxury homes. So again, if you want to talk a little bit more about creating inventory, you can talk to Andres de Arense Gonzalez, who is translating this live right now in Spanish, or you can talk to me. You could come in here. The last way to create inventory that I'm going to give you for free right now is that go out. You know that the demand is high. You can either find a buyer to market to a neighborhood, or you can go, hey, listen, we have tons of buyers looking in this neighborhood. Do you want to limit the amount of times that you're showing, and be properly represented by a local licensed real estate professional so that you can leave the state of California? Please feel free to reach out to us. And of course, we're hiring on March 31st, Machine Gunner Day, 0331 at 11 o'clock. Feel free to come into the office. We're going to be hiring both licensed and unlicensed professionals in order to create inventory. You can legally pay 25% commission to people who are unlicensed for creating inventory, finding people who need to buy inventory, and then referring them to a local licensed real estate professional. Now on the Serpent team, that's what we're going to be all about. Eliminating the barrier between the point of entry, hey, listen, I've decided that I want to work in real estate, and that first paycheck, right? That's what it's all about. How can we get paid now? How can more people get paid now? If it is a commune, if it is a tribe, we're eating together, right? It's 10 o'clock. Even though I was late, I'm going to duck out right now. Okay, the perks of being the professor. All right. Feel free to reach out to me. I don't answer my phone, but go ahead and text me, and then we'll create a time that we can chat. That being said, I'm headed out on vacation tomorrow afternoon, and I can't leave that long because I'm a control freak, and we're growing right now. But I'll be back Friday evening. All right. I love you guys. I appreciate you guys watching. I'll stick around for a moment in the Zoom chat. Great class today. I think that everybody learned something. Cool. Have a good day, everybody. Feel free to reach out to me if you are interested in joining the Serpa team at eXp Realty. Bye, guys.